It rings the buzzer down below. If I pushed it 3 times, you'd see some action. Action? That's the alarm signal. A dozen rats would come out of this door, ready to fight. All the rest, with the women and children, would be hurrying out of the back door. I didn't know there was a back door. It comes out in the woods in a blackberry bramble. It's got a longer tunnel than this one. When Justin appeared, they went down the same hallway as before. But this time, when they reached the chamber where the lift and the stairway led down, Justin paused. Nicodemus thought you might like to see our main hall. Just a quick look. He said you asked about the plan. I did, said Mrs. Frisby, but he didn't tell me about it. It's more than just a plan now, but we're used to calling it that. If you see the main hall, you'll get an idea of what we're doing. So instead of going down as they had before, Justin led the way across the chamber, whereas Mrs. Frisby noticed the tunnel continued. They walked along for what seemed like several more minutes. Somewhere right along here, Justin remarked, we're entering the woods. You'll notice the tunnel runs a bit crooked. I'm going to bend it around to go around the taproots, some as thick as fence posts. Then they went on till they came to a fork in the tunnel. Right fork leads out to the blackberry bramble, said Justin. Left fork leads to the main hall. They took the left fork. Now brace yourself for a surprise. From ahead came noises. Sounds of many rats talking, a sound of hurrying and thumping, and machinery running. They stepped into a room as full of activity as a factory. It was the biggest room Mrs. Frisby had ever seen, half the size of a house with a ceiling and floor of hard gray rock. It was brightly lit with electric bulbs, here the large-sized ones strung unshaded, and beneath them rats were at work everywhere. Rats running electric motors that ran belts that ran small circular saws, lathes, drills, grindstones, and other tools Mrs. Frisby could not name. Rats hammering, welding, cutting, and most of all, rats hauling. There was a steady procession to and from the far end of the chamber, and each of these rats wore a harness, to which was fastened a pair of large sturdy sacks, one on each side, like a miniature pack horse. As the rats trooped in, their sacks were empty. They disappeared into the part of the room that was hidden by a high wall of wood. When they came out, the sacks were full and heavy. As she watched a troop of 10, their sacks bulging, went past her out the tunnel, they greeted Justin and nodded at her. But they did not pause. She noticed that just inside the entrance, an electric fan whirred quietly, aiming inward, pulling fresh air into the room from somewhere out in the woods. Mrs. Frisby stood beside Justin and gaped. She felt dizzy at the sight, the motion, the noise, the size of the room, which must have measured 20 feet long and almost as wide. How could you ever dig such a big room? She asked. We didn't, said Justin. We found it. It's a natural cave. You can see that the ceiling and the floor are solid rock. That's the reason, or the main one, we chose this spot to live. Others had lived here before us, probably for centuries before there was a farmhouse, bears, then wolves, then foxes, then groundhogs. We had quite a cleaning job to do, I can tell you. When we found it, there was a large hole, only a few feet long, leading straight in. But it was so full of sticks and leaves you could hardly see it. We closed that entrance entirely and dug another, longer, narrower, our back door. Then we dug our living quarters under the rose bush and the entrance you came in. The cave is still our chief workshop. Let's go in. As they entered, some of the rats looked up and waved and smiled, but all quickly turned back to the work they were doing, as if they were in a hurry. They're all on a schedule, Justin explained, talking close to Mrs. Frisby's ear, as to be heard above the noise, so they can't stop working. One group, especially busy, was gathered around an odd shape of wood and metal about a foot long. It was curved and had a point at one end. It looked, Mrs. Frisby thought, rather like a side of a small boat. Could the rats be making a boat? Then she saw that they were fastening a strong metal ring on top of it. Justin led her to it. That, he said, is the most important invention, the key to the whole plan. We made a pilot model last autumn. We tried it out and it worked. And now we're making 3 more. But what is it? It's a plow. Nicodemus designed it himself after reading every book he could find about farm tools. It's light and sharp, especially made to be pulled by rats. It takes 8 of us to pull it. More if the turf is tough. But with it, we can turn over, in a day of hard work, a patch of earth about 10 by 15 feet